Happy Family, Burn Orphan Account. Read by Kaiinbed. Relationship includes Aizawa and Yamada, Kaminari and Shinso. Additional tags include temporary character death, hurt Hitoshi, gore, torture, violence, dark, traitor, villain present Mike, traitor Kaminari, mentally unstable Aizawa, married Aizawa and Hisashi, adopted Shinso. Summary. Purple hair stained in red. Dulled lilac rolled to the back of his head as tears dried on his hollowed cheeks. His neck was twisted unnaturally, and two long legs laid a few feet away, unattached to the body. Blood splattered everywhere. Aizawa screams. Purple hair stained in red. Dulled lilac rolled to the back of his head as tears dried on his hollowed cheeks. His neck was twisted unnaturally, and two long legs laid a few feet away, unattached to the body. Blood splattered everywhere. Aizawa screamed. His scream was filled with terror, pain, and disbelief. How could this happen? How? Shinso, his student, basically his son, was just brutally murdered right in front of him. No mercy. Shinso's own screams echoed in his mind, cried pleads for it all just to be over, forever imprinted in his memory. The villain, no. The monster, cackled with glee as Aizawa fell into despair. "You should see your face," the thing screeched. Aizawa had finally stopped screaming, staring at Shinso's broken and tortured body. Shinso had suffered as Aizawa was trapped and forced to watch. Aizawa slowly stood, stumbling as his mind blanked. When the hero came to, he was cradling Shinso's body, gently stroking his usually fluffy hair. The villain was a pile of gore, his guts splattered around the room, head shattered from what appeared to be a mighty stomp. His feet laid on one side of the room, legs thrown to the other. His arms had been ripped off, and one had been shoved down his throat, and the other was a mess of muscle and shattered bones. The body was hanging from the roof with his intestines wrapped around his neck. Aizawa pulled Shinso's cold body towards him and laughed brokenly. Good. The monster got what he deserved. Aizawa didn't even feel bad. His head turned as he heard the door open, and he let out an animalistic sound, only to cut himself off as he saw the face of his husband. The black-haired male's face fell as he let out a heartbroken wail. Yamada crouched down and ran his hand through the locks of his husband. Looking down sadly at their almost son's body, he took in the image of the room, the gory mess of what Yamada could only assume was the villain that killed Shinso. The blonde fake hero was in awe at the beauty of it all. "Did you do that, Sho?" His beloved couldn't even talk over his own sobs as he gripped Shinso's body harder. Yamada smiled. Perfect. His husband was perfect, so protective. Yamada cooed. "Come on, baby. We gotta go, or you'll be arrested for this." Aizawa refused to let go of Shinso, not wanting to leave him. Yamada grinned. "You can bring him, Sho. Don't worry. I know someone that can help him." Aizawa snapped his gaze to his husband desperately. He stood looking down at Shinso's legs, then up at Yamada. The villain gave a gentle smile to his unstable husband. "I'll bring them." Aizawa nodded weakly and let Yamada lead him away from the room and out to a car. He sat in the back as Yamada drove away, never once letting go. To Yamada, this was the perfect opportunity to get the ones he cared about away from hero work. Even if Yamada's friend could mostly heal Shinso and bring him back to life, his legs would be almost useless. He'd be too scared to go anywhere, and Aizawa wouldn't be any better. He wouldn't want to be away from Shinso, would always stay near. Aizawa would be dependent on Yamada, and Shinso would be dependent on both. It was perfect. Of course, Aizawa is a little unstable at the moment, crazy, insane even, and Shinso would have so much trauma. But that was fine. Yamada could fix them. It took days for Shinso to start breathing again, and weeks for him to finally regain consciousness. Aizawa was doing better knowing that Shinso would survive. Yamada's friend, although able to reattach the teen's legs, was unable to fully fix them. They would hurt a lot if he were to walk on them. There were times where Aizawa would cackle to himself as he remembered the terrified screams that the villain made as the male ripped him apart. Yamada encouraged these outbursts, loving the memory as much as his lover. When Shinso did wake up, he screamed in terror until Aizawa rushed into the room to hug him. "I'm sorry," Aizawa whispered into his hair as Shinso clutched onto him. "I'm so sorry." Shinso whimpered like a wounded puppy. "Okay, it's okay." Aizawa shook his head, but stayed holding him. Shinso felt pain. He could tell he'd been hurt badly. He could remember, but he felt much better than before. The pain was mainly coming from his legs. His legs! Shinso's eyes snapped down to his legs, relaxing at the sight of them actually attached to his body. Aizawa followed his line of sight and released a sigh, settling down beside the teen. We managed to attach them again, thanks to one of Hisashi's friends. However, they are going to hurt for a while, and even when they're fully healed, you may not be able to walk very far before it starts hurting again. Aizawa felt guilt build inside of him. "I'm sorry, Hitoshi." With a tired smile, Shinso turned his head towards his father figure. "That's fine, as long as I'm still here, right?" Aizawa smiled himself and reached over to the bedside cabinet, pulling over a water bottle. Shinso took it gratefully and slowly began to drink from it. The older male continued to hug him until Yamada walked into the room. The villain's grin became an excited smile at the sight of their son finally conscious. "Hey, little listener." His voice was quieter than normal, trying to keep Shinso's headache at bay, making the teen very grateful. "Hey, Mike-sensei." Yamada ran his hand through the clean and poofy purple hair as he checked Shinso over. "Glad you're okay, kiddo." The house they were staying in was comfy, but not too small. There were 2 rooms, the couple's room, and Shinso's across the hall. There was a bathroom at the end of the hallway, and the start led to the living room, dining room, and kitchen. The house was well furnished, and even had a few cats. The couple had told Shinso that while he was unconscious, they didn't tell him that he died. They adopted him. Shinso didn't question it, and Aizawa, in his unstable state, had managed to convince himself that it was true. On the topic of Aizawa's mental state, he had gotten better now that Shinso was awake. He was attached to the still injured teen, helping him in the bathroom, cooking for him, carrying him around. Yamada found it adorable. Even when Shinso was able to move around the small home, albeit slowly and sometimes painfully, Aizawa was there and ready to carry him. However, nightmares for both were common. But Yamada was prepared. That's why he had such a big bed in his and his lover's room, after nightmare cuddles. Unbeknownst to his husband and son, the outside world was in chaos. While they were living away from civilization, Yue had a terrible time trying to explain why one of their students and 2 of their teachers had suddenly gone missing after finding a mutilated villain and remains of Shinso's blood. Even after they had gotten through that nightmare, they were attacked. Traitors were revealed, and some of the students were saved because of their relations. Having situations similar to Yamada's new family, it was war out there. But Aizawa and Shinso never asked to leave. They didn't really want to anyway. Shinso would panic every time someone mentioned villains or heroes, giving up on his own dream of being one. Aizawa seemed to have forgotten that he was a teacher and a hero, but that was good. Yamada didn't have to do things to keep them under control like he had a long time ago. This situation had turned into the best possible outcome. Aizawa had taken a liking to gardening. They had endless amounts of land to plant beautiful gardens on. Vegetables, fruits, and flowers surrounded a small pond full of tiny fish that the cats loved to swat at, and a few picnic tables and beach chairs scattered the area. The overall landscape became a gorgeous sight. Shinso became interested in art again. He loved to sketch, paint, or sculpt, and he had serious talent in it. Apparently, he had done it a lot when he was younger, but dropped it later on when moving foster homes became an issue. He found it enjoyable and easy on his legs, so Yamada had an extra room built off of the patio for Shinso to use as his own studio, spoiling him in supplies. Shinso would always get flustered with the gifts, and tell Yamada not to waste so much money. Yamada would just laugh and ruffle his hair affectionately. Yamada himself kept his villain contacts, letting money just roll into his bank account and spoiling his family in luxuries with it. He had turned the basement into a little music studio for himself, and he spent time in it when he wasn't watching over his family. Kaminari Denki, his son's boyfriend and one of the many traders of UA, would be invited over, and Shinso would thrive. He absolutely loved having his boyfriend around so much, and Kaminari loved to hug Shinso close to his chest and lay in bed with him, listening to him ramble enough to put Yamada to shame. Of course, sometimes the pain in Shinso's legs became too much, and sometimes Aizawa's mental state would become too unstable, and both of their nightmares would leave them up all night. But Yamada would always be there. He'd massage his son's sore legs. He'd help his beloved calm down from his cackling sessions. He'd cuddle the shit out of his family to make them happy again. Because this was his perfect family, and no one was going to take them away. And if he had his friend bring back that monster who hurt his son, well, it's not like his family had to see that man again. They didn't need to know about all the tortures Yamada put him through in an act of revenge. You have just finished listening to Happy Family by Orphan Account. If you enjoyed the story, please leave them some feedback on archiveoforon.org/work/23404213. And if you enjoyed my reading of the story, you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Kaiinbed. If you would like to request a fic, there are links in the description.